Good afternoon and welcome to the second in our series of pre-primary candidate forums, a collaborative effort of the two big electronic media here in McMinnville, BLTV, a division of Ben Lomond Connect, and WCPI, Public Radio 91.3, which is owned and operated in the public interest by the nonprofit Warren County Education Foundation, Incorporated. This is Bill Zechman, and I'll be your host for the next hour as we hear from candidates on both the Republican and Democrat side in the August 6 party primaries. This is for the 4th District U.S. House of Representatives. Today we're going to be talking to first the two Republican candidates who are participating in our program. That's Doug Meyer and Randy Sharp. Mr. Meyer is already in position at the podium. And then we'll be going to the Democrat candidates, Noel Bivens and Christopher J. Hale. We, of course, extend the invitation on an equal basis to all of the registered qualified candidates. We received word this afternoon, about mid-afternoon, from Congressman Desjardins' office in Washington that he's going to be occupied with business in the House of Representatives as the House is in session, and he'll be having caucus meetings right after today's session. We did invite him to participate by way of telephone, but his office says that just would not work in his schedule today. So we want to let our viewers and our listeners know that the invitation was made on a strictly equal basis to all the parties. Now, the other issue in today's program is that one of the Democrat candidates, Noel Bivens, is going to be joining us by telephone. We regret to report that she was taken ill this afternoon, and as we understand it, as of 3 or 4 minutes ago, she is still in the waiting room at St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital in the emergency department this afternoon, but her campaign thinks that she will be able to join us by telephone hookup, and the very expert technical staff here at BLTV has got us all arranged for that. Kelvin Bond, Karen Wilson, Tammy Vinson, and of course our good friend Brian, always steadfast, always dependable. So good old BLTV and BLC. Lisa Cope is also here, CEO of Ben Lomond Connect, and we're offering this as a voter education exercise. The candidates are asked to pay absolutely nothing to participate. We're not treating this as a commercial venture, but simply as a public service, because we feel that as custodians and trustees of the public airwaves, we do owe that to the citizens of our community. Let me get in a real quick promo on the WCPI side. This Friday at 2:30, we're going to be offering a special broadcast event. It's a half-hour, uninterrupted, unedited interview with Dr. Todd W. Rice, who is a pulmonologist and internal medicine specialist at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. He has been spending 12-hour days and more doing nothing but treating COVID-19 patients. So we're going to be talking about the impacts of the COVID coronavirus and the people who he meets and he treats for the COVID illness. Well, we're at about 4 minutes after 5. We're just about right on schedule here. So once again, I do want to emphasize, if you're watching on BLTV Channel 6 or listening to 91.3 WCPI at about 5:05 on Wednesday afternoon, July 22nd, this is a live event. It will be repeated, and as I understand it, it is being carried also on BLTV's Facebook page. So all that said, and all the disclaimers out of the way, one other thing we do need to note, that BLTV and WCPI are copyrighting this production. All rights are reserved, so any further rebroadcast, reuse, retransmission of images, audio, or video from this program will need to be cleared by both of those sponsoring entities. All that said, I think, Brian, we've got everything said that needs to be said at the moment anyway. Let's go over to the first candidate, and I had that candidate roster in front of me 5 or 6 times today, just to keep things straight. Let's go first to Mr. Doug Meyer. Mr. Meyer is one of the Republican candidates for 4th District nomination to the U.S. House. Mr. Meyer, take 3 minutes for an opening statement. You can take less if you want to, but 3 minutes maximum. I'll have a question or two based upon your opening statement, and then we'll take up to 3 minutes for a closing statement and summation. So the time is yours, and Brian is our official timekeeper, so just keep an eye on Brian over here, and he'll give you the time signals. Okay. Good. All right. Mr. Meyer.
My name is Doug Meyer, and I am running for U.S. Congress to represent the folks in Tennessee's 4th Congressional District. I'm a patriot, a veteran, a conservative, and a Republican. Now, my family are 10 generations deep here in Tennessee, and they've been here literally since before statehood. My family makes their home in Winchester today. My son is a U.S. Army officer and a Black Hawk pilot, just returned from a deployment. My daughter is in corporate IT. All of our grandchildren are into everything. Now, my experience is 4 years in the military, and then 37 years after that dealing with organized crime, gangs, and criminal counterinsurgency. It's been a rather rough and tumble career. I tell people that I've been beat, bit, cut, shot at, burned, peed on, ran over, lied to, lied about, sued, wrecked, betrayed, and stabbed in the back. And as a result of that, I think that DC politics will probably be no surprise. Now, I'm the kind of guy that you want on your side in a worst case scenario, and I believe, and I think we have the proof for it, we're in the middle of a worst case scenario today. Congress is broken. We have on the left some the Democrats, and if it's sick and it's twisted and it's bizarre, they're up in the middle of it. But on the right-hand side of the aisle, the Republicans don't seem to be doing anything to stem the flow, stem the tide. And as a result of that, we can't seem to make any decisions. America's cities are on fire, and we're in trouble. I believe that the Republic is in trouble today. Now, my Democrat candidate, I've been dealing with Chris Hale for the last several months, and I'll give him credit. He's pushy, but the problem is he's pushy. Indeed, he's been all over the 4th District, Grundy, Marion, Sequatchie, and making social media posts to the effect of these people are traitors, racists, white supremacists, and anti-Jesus. As a result of this, we have had just a crazy amount of turmoil and conflict that is being created inside of these counties. On the heels of that, he turned around and announced after the parade that he'd been in which he called everybody bad names, he decided he's going to return the next week and put on a counter-protest and had the people up in the air. These people wanted to be left alone. But the Democrat came in pushing, insisting that things were other than they were, and at least in these counties, and I can say for at least 13 of the 16, they're fed up with it.
Okay, 3 minutes. Mr. Doug Meyer, thank you very much. I appreciate your cooperation in observing the time limit. You talk about your past as a crime fighter, and apparently you've seen it all in your days as a crime fighter. You say that the Democrats in Congress are knee-deep in everything that's perverse and twisted and all that, but we have a U.S. Senate that's solidly in control of the Republicans, a White House that is, I guess, at least nominally Republican. The president ran as a Republican. So why hasn't anything been done? You've got the White House and you've got the Senate. So what's blocking action on these things that you say are so important?
Well, you're either compromised, sold out, or you've taken the advice that, listen, conservatives and Republicans are supposed to play nice. You're not supposed to go out here. You're not supposed to fight. You're not supposed to stand up hard against them. And apparently somebody didn't get the news, but that politics is in fact conflict. And in my opinion, the majority of them are not engaged in this conflict. You know, all across our country, we're seeing conflict from city to city to city. In fact, in some cases, what you would call open warfare, the destruction of our cities. But our political representatives on both sides of the aisle, and I'll go after a Republican if they've got it coming, they've kept their mouth shut. They've not taken any kind of steps. They've not stood in the way. Now, I know that the president is facing a great deal. If he steps in and he overdoes it in their mind, if he steps in at all, he's going to be accused of abuse of power and overreach. I understand that. But these cities brought it on themselves. In his case, I believe he's doing everything that he can. And each one of the senators, there's 2 per state. And even their own senators are keeping their mouth shut, whether Democrat or Republican. Our congressmen, they representing districts at a time, where are the congressmen for these districts? They're keeping their mouth shut, or in some cases, joining the mob. So
okay, let's talk about that. We're quickly running out of time. We only got to your closing statement, but one of the major books in politics over the last couple of years was Jane Mayer's book entitled Dark Money. Jane Mayer is one of the most, I guess you might say, aggressive, thorough, tenacious reporters in the media today. And in that book, she lays out a bill of particulars against both Republicans and Democrats. And they profess while they're running that I will be virtuous, I'll be pure as the driven snow when it comes to taking money under the table. Well, in the United States, we have legalized bribery, and it's called campaign funding.
that's correct.
So what would you, if you are nominated and you are eventually elected as 4th District U.S. Representative from Tennessee, what are you prepared to do to deal with the influence of big money, particularly dark money, unaccountable, untraceable money?
It's called corruption. You can call it whatever you want to do, but we've gotten to the point between the PACs and the super PACs, and what he's talking about, the dark money, the people are buying influence. Corruption is corruption is corruption. You're going to have a corruption fighter in there, whether it's Democrat or Republican or a bipartisan, to go after this, because we've reached the point at 2020 in which we're not talking a little bit of cash or a little bit of gifts. We're talking a blatant corruption, and the only way to get in there is to fight it and fight it hard. And any crime fighter who goes in there and tries to do this, you know that they're going to be attacked. Just the same way as if a congressman comes in and says, we need term limits. They're not going to prove that. But there's other ways of dealing with this to go around them if necessary. When I said Congress is broken, I didn't say Democrats were broken. I didn't say the Republicans. Congress itself is broken. It no longer does the job that the people have them there for, or that the Republic requires of them in order to maintain our nation. And corruption is at the root of it. You have to root out the corruption.
Would like to follow up on that, but I'm keeping an eye on the time, so let's give you your full 3 minutes if you need to take that much for a closing statement. Here again, Doug Meyer, candidate for 4th District Republican nomination for the U.S. House.
Very good. In conclusion, this is a historic election. We're at the point to where we have a true Marxist communist insurgency going on inside of this country. Our cities, like I said, some of them are on fire. We've destroyed them, and we have a push being done, not necessarily as much from inside the United States as from outside. We're going to have to deal with that. We're in as much danger as if we were being attacked by an external enemy. It is what we call a communist insurgency that's going on inside of the country. It is the perfect storm. It's not one point, it's many, many points all gathered together to create the perfect storm that puts the republic in peril. Now, I say fight back. And what do I mean by fight back? I mean just exactly that. You can do it with your words, you can do it with your actions, you can do it with your money. You can do it by simply using your voice. And the people on the right, the good, conservative, decent folk, also need to be fighting back. Now, what the founders fought and died to establish and protect, I will never compromise or surrender. That I promise. So what I'm asking is for the voters to be brave, think clearly, and choose wisely. Now, while my opponent, Scott Desjardins, he doesn't campaign, he doesn't Q&A, he doesn't town hall, he doesn't debate. Other people are out here fully engaged, and that is what I intend to take to Washington, D.C. when I go. And I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Doug Meyer, Republican candidate for his party's nomination for 4th District U.S. House of Representatives. Mr. Meyer, thank you so much, and good to see you in person. We've talked a couple of times on the phone organizing today's forum, but good to see you. Let's quickly bring up Randy A. Sharp, also seeking the Republican nomination for Congress from the 4th District. And here again, same pattern. Mr. Sharp, take up to 3 minutes for an opening statement, and then we'll have a question or two, and then 3-minute summation.
All right. I'm blessed to be here in Warren County today. I appreciate the invitation. It is an honor to be here. I stand for our Second Amendment, our pro-life. I will help create jobs and try to balance the budget while they're in Washington, D.C. I'm a member of the Locals Lions Club there in Dunlap. I am a business owner. I own and operate a couple of different restaurants and a small hotel there in Dunlap. I do feel like I'm the man for the job. I feel like I have more in common with President Trump. If he wins, he would be more likely to be working with me instead of working with a doctor or someone that really doesn't have a clue about business. With that said, I just think I'm the right man for the job.
Okay, Mr. Sharp, you said one of your real quick, concise campaign promises is that you will create jobs. Give us a little background on that. Give us a sort of put some flesh on the bones on that. What kind of jobs? Where would the jobs be? Where we got the workforce? So let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, we're hoping we want to work with President Trump of bringing our jobs back from China and these other countries to get our people back into working first. Then if there's something left over, go to the other countries. But we need to take care of us first, the people of the great United States of America.
Okay, we're talking about bringing jobs back. You're talking about manufacturing
We're
jobs?
talking about manufacturing jobs, automotive jobs, IT jobs, shirt factory jobs, all types of jobs, yes, sir.
Okay, while we've seen this globalization of the economy, and yes, indeed, many traditionally American manufacturing jobs have gone overseas for lower labor costs and maybe some other factors that American businesses find attractive. But while all this has been going on, manufacturing automation has been going forward. And right here in McMinnville, we're fortunate to have at Motlow State Community College a brand new $5 million advanced robotics and automation training facility. So if jobs, if offshoring our jobs is not such a big issue, but rather automation of the jobs, what are we going to do about that?
Well, I really couldn't answer that. I'd have to get back to you on that because I'm not there yet in that position. So I would have to get back to you on a later date with the answer to that question.
Let me go back to one of the questions I was asking Mr. Meyer, the other Republican candidate for the nomination. And that's this issue of dark money, big money, untraceable, unaccountable money. Since the 2010 decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, in that case known as Citizens United, basically nullified, neutered some of our campaign finance disclosure laws. It seems like there has been not just a stream or trickle of money going into politics, but an absolute gusher that doesn't stop. What would you do to make this money situation in politics more transparent, and try to rein it in? What's your plan?
I would negotiate with all the other congressmen to let's put a stop to this money and vote totally against it and try to make it more transparent, and let's see where all this money's coming from.
So I'm not trying to read between the lines or put words in your mouth, but since the Supreme Court has ruled on that, and it's not likely that they're going to go back and revisit Citizens United anytime soon, are you talking about some legislation that would do an end run around Citizens United?
Yes, sir. Some legislation. Don't know if it has to be to run around. Like I said, again, I'm not there yet, so I don't know exactly what I could do, but that would be one thing I would work on. I have not received any donations from anyone at this moment. If the public wants to donate me $5 or $10, I'll be more than happy to accept it. But the big super PACs and all that, just stay away.
Okay.
I don't want it.
I don't want to harp on Citizens United too much, but what the Supreme Court said, or one of those justices writing the majority opinion said, is that essentially we will treat corporations like people, and corporations have the same First Amendment rights that people have, and that is what they cite, of course, freedom of speech, and they're equating money with speech. So as we don't want to put a limit on free speech, by the same theory, we don't want to put a limit on how much money a person can donate, and that's the situation we've had. So, I mean, do you think you could get a majority of your colleagues in the U.S. House to support something like that?
I would be more than willing to try. I have been known in the past. I am a pretty good negotiator. I've been a real estate agent. I do know how to negotiate. So I would think I could work with the people to get things right.
Okay. Let me get back on the personal side a little bit. You run a couple of restaurants.
Yes, sir.
In Dunlap.
Yes, sir.
Has your business, restaurant business, I think you said you're also in the hotel business,
Yes.
have you felt the impact of the COVID pandemic?
Oh, have I ever felt it? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's extremely bad. The personal protection check thing, I don't think it went to the small mom and pop places that don't have a big, huge amount of employees. I think I was in a category of 1 to 500. I haven't received a dime up to this point. So it just made the rich richer.
That has been the complaint, that the well-off who had strong relationships with the big money banks,
Yes.
who basically process the applications and the paperwork for the COVID relief program, they got there first
Yes, sir.
and sucked in all the money.
Yes.
So I'm taking it you would, if you're in Congress, you would support legislation to maybe even things out between
yes,
the
do
between
things
the
the
big
right
boys and the smaller actors.
Yes,
right?
the small business is the backbone of our country. Everybody agrees with this. Then why does the mom and pops, our doors was told to be closed, so why can't we get the money? We need the money. We're the one that needs it. If you got 500 employees, you don't need any money for 2 months. Surely to God, or you're not doing anything. You're not doing something right.
Okay, let's go to your closing statement, and here again a maximum of 3 minutes. Just keep your eye on Brian Kell. He'll give you the countdown. Okay, we're ready.
Okay. I want to keep standing with our police officers. Police are not all bad. I tell you, when a police officer pulls you over, if you will be polite to him and ask him what kind of days he's having, he's going to respond back a little differently. Main thing, I want to make America strong again. I want to make America safe again. I think I can do this. I think that I am the answer, part of the answer of soothing our nation. Let's just keep making America greater, and I think I can negotiate with our president and work with him fully to bring our jobs back home. Let's make America even greater.
Well, okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it very much. Randy A. Sharp.
Randy A. Sharp.
Okay.
Yes,
Republican candidate for his party's nomination in U.S. Congress, 4th District. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, this is a live production. If you're listening on 91.3 or watching on Channel 6 BLTV or BLTV's Facebook page, this production is originating in the studios of BLTV here on Smithville Highway in McMinnville. And we're going up to 6 o'clock, not past 6 o'clock. And of course, the programs will be repeated on BLTV Channel 6 and WCPI 91.3. As I mentioned at the outset of today's program, one of the Democrat candidates who had earlier confirmed her appearance here has been taken ill. She is in, we understand right now, the emergency room at St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital. And we don't have any more information than that, but we're going to try to hook up by telephone. We have talked to the Bivens campaign, and we're going to try to see if we can make contact by telephone. We've got Tammy standing by if I have a problem here, so we're going to give this a try. All right, and we'll dial into that number, which
The number you have dialed has not been...
Okay. Oh, there's the number. I've got too many pieces of paper here. I think that's my problem. Okay, hit 9. Okay. Your keyboard has a hair trigger, I've got to say. Okay.
You have dialed an...
And I've got your code here. Does that mean we're in? Okay, good. We're expecting Noel Bivens to answer.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Bivens.
Yes. How are
Great.
you?
Hey, great. Bill Zechman here in McMinnville at BLTV Studios. The question is, how are you doing?
I am holding in. I am waiting to be taken back for some testing.
Okay, from what I understand from your campaign, you started feeling some symptoms yesterday and they just worsened throughout today. So you are at the in the emergency department at St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital.
Correct.
Okay, so you've been checked in. Well, listen, we don't want to add to your discomfort or burden at this time, and certainly wish you the very best when you go back and get examined and get ready for treatment or whatever the health officials prescribe for you. But I want to welcome you to our live candidate forum. Let me mention once again that Noel Bivens is one of the 2 registered candidates as Democratic contenders for their party's nomination for 4th District U.S. Congress. Our process has been, Noel, to take up to 3 minutes for an opening statement. I'll have a question or 2 based on that statement, and then we'll go back to you for a 3-minute close. So go ahead and start. I'm watching Brian Kell, who has the official timepiece over here. So Noel, go ahead and start with your statement.
Thank you, Bill. And I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person. I gave it my best, but sometimes our bodies demand to that we pay attention to them. So I'm glad I could join you this way, at least. For everyone watching and listening, my name is Noel Bivens. I am here fighting to represent all of the constituents of Tennessee's 4th Congressional District, even those of you I may not agree with. I've had some conversations with some of you, and we have found some common ground, and I welcome that. I believe that's what we need to see more of, especially in a district like ours. I grew up here in Middle Tennessee, and it's where I've always considered to be home. I learned that volunteer spirit at a very young age and got involved in activism and in community service work and it's something that I took with me as I went elsewhere throughout the country, from coast to coast, working towards, fighting for change, fighting for social justice, for everything from LGBTQ rights to healthcare, workers' rights, food insecurity, and so much more. And, when I came home last year and I saw what was happening here, I saw that Jay Charlet was still here. He was still not doing what needed to be done for the people of this district, and especially as we went to work on the campaign for Bernie Sanders and talked to so many people who were hurting so much and really needed someone who would step up and fight for them. I recognized that it was my time to step out and do something. I never really intended to run for office. I'd always worked with, put my efforts towards issue work, helping candidates who were fighting for the same things, lobbying those in every level of government. But it was clear that the time had come that it was time for me to step out there and be the representative that we all need. It's hard to say, what exactly it's like to be out here, and especially with something like COVID going on, that is, it has made such a change in the atmosphere. And here I am getting COVID tests myself, and the fear that has ravaged through our district, whether for health or whether for the economic impact, has just been, really reiterated the need for someone like myself who will go and who will fight for the policies that we need, like Medicare for all, and, a Green New Deal, and workplace democracy, economic equality, and, fully funded education from pre-K through college, and so much more.
Sure, Ms. Bivens, we're a little bit over on your opening statement. We'll
sure.
take a few seconds off your closing statement, if that's okay,
Sure.
to balance things up. You worked in Bernie Sanders' campaign. Of course, probably his signature issue was Medicare for all, universal single-payer health insurance. So could we assume that if you got the Democratic nomination and you were elected to Congress, this would be one of your major agenda items, health care for all?
Absolutely. I have actually already, through the Progressive Democrats of America, I have pledged my support as a co-sponsor of this bill to ensure that, that we all have the health care that we need. I don't have to tell anyone the shape of health care here in Tennessee. We know without the Medicaid expansion how much people are suffering, the hospital closures, and the medical debt, the bankruptcies that have come from it. So that is my number one priority. Like so many, 70% of voters have stated that is indeed their top priority for this election season. So that's what I am going to do.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, Ms. Bivens. The COVID-19 impacts have left no stone unturned. I think every person who draws a breath has been affected in some way or another, some much more profoundly and drastically than others, of course. But it seems like one of the most perverse things in all of this is employees who had employer-assisted or employer-subsidized health insurance. They were part of their employer's group health plan. When they lost their jobs because of COVID-19, they also lost their health insurance. Would your plan address that situation?
Absolutely. That is one of the founding reasons for Medicare for all, is the fact that as we've seen, especially with COVID amplified so much, that tying healthcare to employment is disastrous for so many. It traps people into jobs that they maybe don't necessarily want to be at any longer. It prevents them from advancing because they are so reliant upon that healthcare, especially if they or their family members have pre-existing conditions that may not travel, may not be accepted by a new plan. And so that is where Medicare for All comes in, and that is where we have seen amplified so much by the tens of millions of Americans who have lost their health care along with their job because of this crisis, that now more than ever we need this.
Ms. Bivens, under the COVID relief legislation passed by Congress, we're up to $2 trillion and counting. We don't know at this point on July 22 what Congress is going to do about extending those supplemental $600 a week unemployment insurance benefits funded by the federal government. We just don't know what's going to happen with that. Along with the jobs crisis after the COVID pandemic hit, there's also a housing crisis, particularly people not able to make their mortgage payments or their rent payments. Do you have any agenda items on that, on secure housing for Americans?
We are absolutely, one of the bills that I've signed on to is to increase accessibility to affordable housing. In addition to that, I have pledged my support for UBI, which would provide a universal basic income. It would ensure that every American has that basic income, come what may, to be able to pay those basic things that we need, regardless of what's happening, in our economy or in our environment or public health crisis. They would have the funds to keep that housing over their head. They wouldn't have to be worrying about losing it in the midst of, the worst public health crisis and one of the worst economic crises that we've ever seen as a country.
Okay, Ms. Bivens, one more question, and then we'll go into your closing statement. I mentioned the $600 COVID supplemental uninsured unemployment insurance benefit. I hear a lot of employers complaining that some people are perfectly happy to accept that and not go back to work. That's a better deal for them economically than actually working. So some employers, particularly in the lower wage sectors, are having, or they say they're having difficulty recruiting employees. So if we have UBI, is that not a further negative for employers?
I don't believe that it is. And along with that, I am fighting for workplace democracy, which includes a living wage for everyone, so that we don't have a situation where we have, additional income is pushing people up into a financial bracket that's better than what we're paying them. Minimum wage in Tennessee has been stuck at $7.25 an hour for more than a decade. And because of that, when you do add that extra $600 a month, it is putting folks back up, more than they would typically bring home, in working. And so, the combination of the two, of having that, that secured income that they know that they can pay, their basic bills with, being able to have a job that pays enough to care for their families, to pay for child care, to do all of the things that they need, will actually incentivize people and give them the freedom to work in jobs that they, are more apt for their skills. Many people are stuck in these low-wage jobs because there is no other option. They are stuck there because of health care or because of, child care needs, or just needing to pay the bills and not being able to, to go out. All of these things tie together. If we're providing people with fully funded public education. They're able to get the skills and training that they need. They're doing jobs that they want to be doing. Then UBI becomes a support for that rather than a hindrance to people wanting to work.
Okay, a lot of questions kind of ramify out from that, but we're right up on our time limit. Let's go to your closing statement. Let's do 2.5 minutes, I'm told, for your closing statement, please.
Absolutely. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in tonight and for checking us all out. I really just want to reiterate that I am the candidate who can take on Mr. Desjardins. I do come from working class. The bills I'm fighting for because I need them, because I have experienced what it's like not to have health care, what it's like to have to work 3 or 4 jobs just to pay the bills. I am stubborn. I will hold tight and not compromise. We are a grassroots campaign, and we're out here doing the work that needs to be done to ensure that we all have the representation that we need. And the fact that I am here, even from the emergency room, letting folks know what's going on when our current representative is nowhere to be found just speaks to the fact that I am going to provide us with the representation that we need and with the attention that District 4 deserves now and in the future.
Well, okay. Well, thank you very much. And again, I appreciate your cooperation in observing the time limits. We've been talking to Noelle Bivens, candidate for the Democratic nomination for Congress from Tennessee's 4th District. We were actually speaking to Ms. Bivens from the waiting room at the emergency department at St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital in Murfreesboro. And Ms. Bivens, we wish you the very best, and very sorry to hear about your illness, which prevents you from being with us today. We're going over now to the other candidate. There are only 2 candidates in the Democratic primary, all of these subject to the will of the voters, August 6th, and of course early voting is going on now. If you have any questions about the schedule for early voting, the procedures, or your registration, your voter registration status, call the Warren County Election Commission. Susie Davenport and her very effective professional staff will make sure that you got the answers to your questions. Let's go now to Mr. Christopher J. Hale, and I want to mention for the benefit of our viewers and listeners that we are following the sequence, the alphabetical sequence, and we did explain this to all of the candidates in arranging this forum, that we would follow that sequence in which they appear on the official ballot. Mr. Hale, welcome to BLTV and WCPI, and we're ready for your 3-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, Bill, and I appreciate being in Warren County. I want to begin with the fact that I am here. Doug Meyer, we might disagree. I disagree with what he says about Islamic agents being in our public schools. I disagree with him saying that they're satanic. I disagree with him saying that perhaps that Muslim women are a chagrin to God. I disagree with that, but I give him credit. Unlike his opponent, Scott Desjardins, he shows up. And I want to give Noelle Bivens my best, too, in the hospital. She's in my thoughts and my prayers. I told her as such. 2,599. I want you to know what that means. 2,599. That is how many days it has been before Congressman Desjardins has stood before you, the people of Tennessee, in the flesh, and took questions in open forum. I was 23 years old the last time he did that. Barack Obama was president of the United States. Donald Trump was a TV star on Celebrity Apprentice. It's been 7 years since Congressman Desjardins has stood before you, the people of Tennessee, and taking your questions. We know that scandal that brought him down, that hurt his leadership, that 3 abortion, 6 mistress, illegally prescribing painkillers and pulling a gun on his ex-wife scandal. We know about that. But what that scandal has done is rendered our congressman ineffective. $1.7 million is what he has made in a decade in Congress. The only thing he's done, the only leadership he's shown, the only bill he shepherded through this Congress was renaming a post office. Folks, I'll get you that on day one. Congressman Desjardins got rich, and you and I got sick. Before this virus came, he did nothing to stop it. For 70 days in January, February, and March, this administration and Congressman Desjardins, a doctor, knew that this virus was coming and did nothing to stop it. But here's the most important part and what I want to talk about tonight. After the virus came, he did nothing to help us. President Trump, me and him might have some disagreements, but he was right on March 17th when he proposed a bill to give free virus testing to every Tennessean, to give a small business stimulus to small businesses in this community, and to give paid sick leave to every Tennessean so they don't have to go to school, go to work when they get COVID-19. President Trump, the President of the United States, said the 39 men who opposed that bill were third-rate stooges. President Trump is right. Congressman Desjardins was a third-rate stooge for opposing that bill. I'm a person who has spent my time in my life here as a native Tennessee, standing up to the bullies and fighting for the forgotten. I show up, I fight for my people, and Congressman Desjardins does not. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you very much. You're right on time with your 3-minute.
We did well together. We synced well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me go back to a theme we addressed over in the Republican congressional primary, and that is the role of dark money. Now, in every campaign season that I can remember, we've had challengers as candidates, not so much incumbents, but challengers as candidates, come out and promise to drain the swamp, so to speak.
Sure.
But the swamp seems to get deeper and with a lot more nasty creatures in it year by year. So with all of these, high-sounding promises, pious promises about curbing the effects of untraceable, unaccountable money in American politics, nothing happens.
Sure. Well,
what's your plan?
Bill, in Tennessee, you and I know that we judge what someone will do based on what they've already done. Let's look what I've done. I've run for this office in 90 days. I got 3,000 contributions, all from individuals, the average contribution being $27.11. My opponent, Congressman Desjardins, he is funded by 6 individuals. His average contribution was $1,800, and he got over 3/4 of his money from PAC dollars. Congressman Desjardins is funded by dark money. There's 3 things I want to do on day one, and I have my promise before you on the 5th of January, 2021. When I put that left hand on the Bible and that right hand in the air, I'll do this. Number 1, we need to overturn Citizens United. We know Citizens United, it was wrong, it was problematic. Corporations are not people, people are not corporations. We need to ensure that equal ability of the American people to participate in the election of their elected officials, and that corporate money should not be influencing our elections. Congressman Desjardins got $3 and $4 of his dollars from corporations and lobbies and PACs. I got 0. We should ensure that no public official can do that. Second thing I want to ensure is that every citizen has the access to publicly finance the elections. 3,000 Americans and Tennesseans funded my campaign with $27.11. Even if you're poor, even if you don't have access to funds, I think you should have access to a public pot of money so that you can invest small, moderate dollar democracy. I am funded not by the rich and the powerful, by you, but by you and your family. And I want to ensure that's the way we run our elections here in Tennessee.
Mr. Hale, let's go back to something that your opponent, Noelle Bivens, said from the emergency department at St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital. She said she has pledged to support UBI, Universal Basic Income. I'm going to ask you the same question. Where do you come down on universal basic income?
During the context of COVID-19, I think we need $1,500 a month for the next 3 months, but we need to structure that within the context of reality going forward. Noelle's a good woman, but she also said today on her Facebook that she also supports the Balanced Budget Amendment, the BBA, which is actually a right-wing idea brought out by Robert Norquist. What that says is that we cannot actually go into debt. No deficit spending. If you support the Green New Deal, if you support Medicare for all, If you support UBI, the average income in this community of the 40,000 people of Warren County is $47,500 for a family of four. We know that would be a tax rate of nearly 75% if we did all those initiatives. I want to start with Medicare for all with single payer because that's the most important issue. We know that the 4,000 folks in Warren County who are uninsured, that a single payer system would be the best way of going there. But when we talk about progressive ideas, we need to start with rural Tennessee because that's where we represent. To me, the first need in rural Tennessee is healthcare. Now, one thing I want to note for Medicare for All that I think is really important. Medicare for All has a particular urban focus. We know that premiums in the state of Tennessee are lower in urban communities and higher in rural communities. Under Medicare for Y'all, which is my plan, we will have a guaranteed access to a hospital within 60 miles, and if private industry cannot provide it, the state will. So that will lower costs for folks here in rural Tennessee. So on progressive policy, I'm someone who looks at reality first and looks at where we live first and figures out the best way of doing it. To me, that begins with healthcare.
Speaking of healthcare, one of the certainly foundational elements in healthcare in any community is the hospital.
Sure.
And clinics. We've had hospitals, we've had, I think, 11 in Tennessee, correct me on that number if I'm wrong, 11 to close their doors.
Yes.
Because of reimbursement rates, but also because of declining patient intakes.
Sure. I mean,
so what's your prescription here?
I think we have to be more honest in our assessment. The reason that rural hospitals are closing across our congressional district is because of a lack of a leadership from our government. Here's the reality of expanding Medicaid. It is the best offer that you could ever get as a Tennessean. It will ensure 400,000 Tennesseans who do not have health care today. The state of Tennessee won't pay a dime for a decade, and after that, they'll only pay starting at 10 cents on the dollar. We know that in rural communities, protect the rural way of life. We oftentimes hear our Republican friends talk about it. But do you know in the rural communities of Tennessee that the reality of it is that two in every $5 that flows into that community is subsidized by the actions of the state and federal government. When we subsidize healthcare, we're actually protecting the rural way of life. I know by expanding Medicaid, we will save rural hospitals, but also by transitioning to a single payer system. Now look, my Republican opponents, they like to hold the Bible high in one hand, and then they denigrate everything it stands for in the other hand. The reality of it is that Jesus tells us in the Gospel of St. Matthew chapter 25 that healthcare is a human right, and I think the government has a rigorous role to play in that.
My last question, since you mentioned religion.
Sure.
Doug Meyer, who's running for the Republican nomination for Congress, made a statement that you basically charged some people in the 4th District of Tennessee with being, to use his words, anti-Jesus. What's that all about? Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, Doug Meyer, God bless him, he'll make up anything. That's what happens, folks, when you're losing. When you're losing elections, you'll say anything. Doug's in trouble. His campaign's in trouble. And so he'll say anything, do anything to win an election. I'm not like that. That's not how a leader should operate, and that's not how I'm going to operate. Here's the reality. I said that Confederate flag is racist, and that's the case. Do you know who else said that? Mr. Meyer, do you know who else said that? Donald John Trump said that. In 2015, he said the exact same thing, that Confederate flag is an affront to Christianity, that it's racist. President Trump's absolutely right. Doug Meyer's wrong. That flag is racist, and it hurts our communities. But here's the fact. The reality of it is whether or not people disagree with that flag or not, we can all agree on this. Every Tennessean, no matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, or none of the above, in this day in politics, we might not agree with the flag, but don't we agree that every Tennessean wants a good job, a living wage, a safe community, good schools for their kids, health care, and hospitals? My Republican opponent, Scott Desjardins, has been in office a decade. Unemployment in this community in Warren County today is 18%. It is the worst since the Great Depression. Scott Desjardins should have taken leadership on COVID-19. He did not. COVID-19 is endorsing him for his re-election because he did not fight against it, and our communities are losing.
COVID-19 endorsed him.
It's my opinion that COVID-19 endorsed Scott Desjardins because Scott Desjardins gave a sanctuary city for COVID-19 right here in Tennessee. The unemployment rate in this community is so high because Congressman Desjardins has not shown up and taken leadership. We talk about being pro-life. You know what's being pro-life? Being pro-life is wearing a mask. That President Trump says that. Being pro-life is protecting our hospitals. Being pro-life is ensuring that every Tennessean has health care and hospitals and good jobs and a living wage. Congressman Desjardins is not pro-life, and that's why our communities are struggling.
Okay, let's go now to your 3-minute closing and summation. Here again, Christopher J. Hale, competing for the Democratic nomination for U.S. Congress 4th District.
Some people think I'm a bit aggressive. I'm a fighter. I acknowledge that. But I fight with joy. I fight with love. Because I know who I am. I know where I'm from, right here. And I know who I'm fighting for. By grace, by birth, by choice, I'm a Tennessean. This is my home, and you are my people. You know, there's some people out there who say that we should just give up on those dreams that we have for ourselves and our posterity, that we should concede and fold. But I think we have to lift our eyes above the obstacles we face and look to the Tennessee horizon, to a state where every child can have the hope of a world-class education, where a good job's not just a wish, but a reality, where healthcare and hospitals are the God-given right of every citizen, where women receive equal pay and a living wage is paid to all. A Tennessee where after a lifetime of labor, there's time for rest, for faith, for family. I know if we look into our hearts, we can create that Tennessee. And that journey begins right here, right now. I want to speak first to the Democrats. To every Democrat looking at me today, you know me, and I know you. We have to win this election. We cannot get by losing an election by 30 points every year. Something's got to change. If you put me as your nominee, I will be the youngest nominee this community has put forward since Albert Gore Jr. 40 years ago. We have over 3,000 donations from across this country. We outraised Congressman Desjardins by 5-1. That was the greatest ratio of any challenger candidate in this country. We have 300 volunteers, we have 700 signs in the ground, and we made over 50,000 contacts with Tennessee voters. We are the movement, the youth-led movement, who is going to beat Congressman Desjardins like a drum on the 3rd of November and bring generational change to Tennessee and America. And finally, I want to speak to everyone else. I might not earn your vote just yet on August the 6th. But we have about 106 days going forward until this election. Aren't you tired of a congressman who doesn't show up? Doug Meyer and I have our disagreements, but he's a fighter. He shows up. He goes across this community and tries to earn your vote. Why does Scott Desjardins not do that? Why is he too good for you? Why does he think he's too good for you to hear you out? In the midst of this pandemic, Congressman Desjardins, instead of taking a vote on the biggest bill in American history, got a taxpayer-funded elected knee surgery. That's who he serves. I'll fight for you and your family, and I'm humbly asking for your support.
Thank you very much. Christopher J. Hale, competing for the Democratic nomination for 4th District, U.S. House of Representatives. We thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Hale.
Bill. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you for being here. Well, we also want to thank all of our viewers on BLTV, Community Channel 6, Public Radio WCPI 91.3, and we certainly appreciate your interest and your support as we've explained previously. This is a voter education exercise presented as a public service by BLTV and WCPI. We certainly appreciate the candidates who participated. We had all of the candidates, except for Scott Desjardins, the incumbent, here before the cameras this evening. Christopher Hale was here. Noelle Bivens came to us by way of telephone. She is awaiting treatment at St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital, so we wish her all the best. Again, we made the invitation to this forum open to all of the qualified candidates on an equal basis. Absolutely no preference, no influence on that process. So we do appreciate their attendance. Thanks to Karen Wilson, Tammy Vinson, Brian Kell, Kelvin Bond, and Lisa Cope here at BLTV. To Dr. Norman Roan, Mary Cantrell, and station engineer Richard E. Myers at WCPI. We want to thank you all. We appreciate your interest and invite you to stay tuned for community-centered programming from BLTV and WCPI 91.3. For BLTV and WCPI, this is your host, Bill Zechman. We're clear. Great.
Thank you so much.